So hello everyone, my name is Antoinette Nent and I'm studying sport and exercise management. I'll also be asking all of your burning questions that were asked on our Instagram for our healthy eating guest, Aislinn McCourt. On that note, we're very pleased to have Aislinn here today to talk about all things healthy eating. If you'd like to tell the people a little bit yourself.
Okay, thanks Antoinette. My name is Aislinn. I am a registered dietitian. I'm currently in the final year of my PhD here in UCD, and I also work part-time as a dietitian in a local community hospital.
Okay, so we can move on to the seminar then.
Great. So I just have a few slides here that I can share. Okay, can you see those okay?
Yeah, they're perfect, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so today I'm going to be discussing healthy eating, and here in Ireland our healthy eating principles are based around the food pyramid. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it basically has different food groups ranked in order of how often we should be eating them. So fruit and veg are there in the bottom, we should be consuming those most often, and the whole way up to the top are foods that are high in fat, sugar and salt, which we should be consuming least often. So I'm just going to go through each level here of the food pyramid in more detail. So starting with vegetable salad and fruit, we should be eating 5 to 7 servings of these a day, and this should be the basis of every meal. So what is a serving of these foods? So a serving of vegetables, for example, is half a cup. A serving of salad is 1 cup, and a serving of fruit is whatever can fit in the palm of your hand. So for example, 1 apple of around 10 grapes. It's important to note as well that the likes of smoothies only contribute to 1 serving a day, as some of the nutrition is lost whenever the fruit is blended up. And also in terms of fruit juice, you should only be consuming 150 ml a day, as these can be high in sugar. It's important to aim for a wide variety of different colours and a wide variety of different vegetables and fruit every day to ensure we're getting a good range of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants and lots of fibre. Moving on up then, we come to wholemeal cereals, breads, potatoes, pasta and rice, and we should be having 3 to 5 servings of these a day. And it's important that we don't limit or exclude these from our diet, as carbohydrates are actually the main source of energy for our body and our brain, and they also provide us with fibre and B vitamins. It is important to opt for wholemeal and brown options where we can to make sure we're getting plenty of fibre, but it's also important to be aware of the serving size of these foods to make sure we're not over-consuming on calories. So for example, 2 thin slices of bread is a serving, 1 cup of cereal is a serving, 1 cup of cooked rice, pasta or noodles, and then 2 medium potatoes is a serving of carbohydrate. So this here is taken from the FSAI Healthy Eating Guidelines, and it's just about breakfast cereals. So breakfast cereals are a really good option for breakfast for those who are quite busy, like students like ourselves. But it's just really important that we pick the best option available to us, as some of them can be really high in sugar or salt. So you can choose the best cereal by looking at the nutrition label on the back of the cereal box and look at the nutrition information per serving. So for example, for fibre, we want a cereal that is high in fibre, so that's 3 grams or more per serving. We want one that is low in saturated fat, so 1.5 grams or less, and I'll come back to saturated fat a bit later on. We want a cereal that is overall low in fat, so this is 3 grams or less. And then we want a cereal that's low in sugar, so this is no more than 6 grams per serving. Coming then to milk, yogurt and cheese. So we want to have 3 servings of dairy foods a day, and this is because dairy foods are high in protein, calcium, vitamins and minerals. And it's really important that we try and get our 3 servings a day in our 20s, as our bones and the foundation of our bones is still being built, and this will help us prevent osteoporosis later in life. So low-fat milk, for example, is one of the most nutritionally complete foods out there, and this basically means that it contains all essential vitamins and minerals. So low-fat milk is actually a great post-workout drink, because it is nutritionally complete, and so there's no need to be paying lots of money for expensive protein drinks or protein bars. Most people are consuming too much protein anyway, so a glass of milk is all you need after a workout. And where you can, opt for low-fat and fortified options when they're available to you. So similar to the breakfast cereal, this again is taken from the FSAI Healthy Eating Guidelines to help us pick the best yogurt. So on the left, we have the nutrition label for a natural yogurt, and on the right, we have the nutrition label for a flavoured yogurt. So for yogurts, you want to look at the label per 100 grams. So we want it to be low in fat, which is less than 3 grams per 100 grams. We want it to be low in saturated fat, which is less than 1.5 grams per 100 grams. And then for a natural yogurt, we want it to be 5 grams or less per 100 grams sugar. And then for a flavoured yogurt, we want it to be 9 grams or less per 100 grams. And it's important to remember that yogurts contain naturally occurring sugars, and these sugars are absolutely fine to include in your diet. It's just important to remember that some yogurts then have added sugar on top of those naturally occurring sugars. So moving on then to meat, poultry, fish, eggs, beans, and nuts. So we should be aiming to have 2 servings of these a day, and a serving of these foods is whatever can fit in the palm of your hand. So these foods are really important as they provide protein, vitamins, and minerals. We should be aiming to have red meat only once or twice per week. Red meat is really high in iron, and it's one of the main sources of easily absorbed iron in our body, but it can be quite hard on the gut. So this is why you would limit to only once or twice per week. Oily fish, you should be aiming to have it at least once per week. This is because, again, it is high in protein, but it also contains really good fats, which are good for our heart health and our brain function as well, but they also contain vitamin D. White fish, shellfish, and chicken are high in protein but low in fat as well, so they're really good to include regularly. You can bulk up meals with beans and pulses as well. This will also increase the fibre content of your meals. And then you also want to trim any visible fat off your meat as well. And then in terms of nuts, the Irish population don't eat enough nuts, so try and increase your nut intake when you can. Again, bearing in mind a portion, so a portion of nuts is a small handful, and try and have different types of nuts every day to ensure you're getting a wide range of vitamins and minerals. So moving on then to fats, oils, and spreads. These are high in calories, but they're really important in our diet to make sure we're getting the right fatty acids for our brain and heart health. So we want to limit saturated fat, and saturated fat is found in foods such as butter and coconut oil, and saturated fats contribute to high cholesterol levels. Whereas unsaturated fats, such as those found in rapeseed oil, olive oil, and sunflower oil, have either no effect on heart health or can contribute positively to heart health. So it's important to try and choose these types of oil in cooking where possible. A tip as well, whenever you're shopping and you're looking for rapeseed oil, for example, rapeseed oil can actually be quite expensive, but if you look at the ingredient list for oils that are marketed as vegetable oils, they're actually 100% rapeseed oil and are a fraction of the price than those that are marketed as rapeseed oil. Then just a very brief note on supplements. Multivitamins are not needed for the general population. You should be aiming to try and get all your vitamins from a balanced diet, and you can do that just by doing your best to stick to the servings in the food pyramid. However, in Ireland, we do need a vitamin D supplement daily from October to April. This is because the sun's rays aren't strong enough during these months for us to make vitamin D in our skin. So it's recommended that adults take a 10 microgram supplement daily during these months. Folic acid is also needed for women of childbearing age, so we should be taking a 400 microgram supplement daily, regardless of whether you're hoping to fall pregnant or not. This is to prevent neural tube defects in the unborn child. So with all of this in mind, what does a balanced meal actually look like? So this is a portion plate taken from Cree, Heart and Stroke. So if you imagine this as your dinner plate, half of your plate should be covered in vegetables or salad. A quarter should be covered in your carbohydrates, so your whole grain rice, pasta or potatoes with the skin on. And then the last quarter should be for your protein, so your meat, fish, your alternatives, your pulses. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a few student-friendly tips for eating a balanced diet on a student budget. So the main piece of advice I would say would be to plan your meals weekly. So what we do in my house, for example, is we on a Sunday night make a list of what we plan to eat for our meals that week, and then use that list to compile our shopping list, and we just have that stuck up on the fridge that we can add and change it as we need to during the week. Shopping list, you should only go shopping really once or twice a week's maximum, just to keep the unnecessary spending down. Some shopping tips as well: don't go when you're hungry because you'll end up buying more than you need. Try some own brand products. These are often just as good as the branded products, so trial and test these and see what works for you, and they're a fraction of the price. There are more tips for shopping on a budget on the INDI website. I just don't have enough time to go through them today, so check them out if you're interested in learning more. And the last thing I'll say about this is be flexible and gentle on yourself. This isn't a rigid plan, it's just a guide to help you eat the best that you can. If you want to swap some days around or feel like having a takeaway the odd time, that's absolutely fine. Be gentle and kind to yourself. So the next thing I would say is that the freezer is your best friend. So contrary to popular belief, frozen fruit and veg can actually be equally, if not more, nutritious than those found in the fresh produce aisles. This is because the fruit and veg is often frozen at the source, whereas fresh fruit and veg often loses some of its quality as it's transported from the farm to the supermarket and then the supermarket to home. So frozen stir-fry mixes, for example, are really handy for students. Other frozen vegetable mixes can be used as a side dish for any meal. Frozen fruit can be used in smoothies or in porridge, or to make berry compote for yogurt or porridge. Stick any leftovers you have into the freezer and you can use them later on. Another thing I'll say for cooking as a student is that often recipes online are portioned up for 4 portions. And you know what? It's easier both ingredient-wise and time-wise just to make up those 4 portions, for example, and stick the extra portions into the freezer, and then you'll have some lunches or some dinners ready for the following week. Another tip is that you can get chopped onions and garlic in the freezer section. These reduce food waste. They're already chopped and ready to go, and they're just really convenient just to chuck into any meal that you're making. And the last thing then is around bulk buying. So I'm going to use bread as an example here, and I don't mean, you know, going and buying 10 pans of bread. Just sometimes it's better value to buy a full pan of bread rather than a half pan of bread. So buy the full pan, put half of it in the freezer when you get home from your shop, and then you don't need to buy bread the next week. So it's just a little more on freezer foods. So they're often cheaper, there's less food waste, they're often nutritionally equal, they last longer, you have variety all year round, and they're easy prep. And then just some examples of foods that are suitable for the freezer: bread, meat, butter, stock, cheese, raw pastry, things like that. So you can find out more about that on my Instagram if you are interested. So lastly then, just some tips for canned foods. So canned foods are a cheap and easy way to get some nutrient dense foods into your diet, but it's all about picking the best options. So for example, for chickpeas and beans, you want to strain and wash them, as this will remove any excess salt. And also chickpea water can be used as an alternative to eggs in baking or cooking. If you're buying fruit, try to buy fruit in its own juice rather than in syrup, as this will have extra sugar, and then avoid buying vegetables in brine, as this will have extra salt in it. So I have just some meal ideas for students. I won't go through all of these just in the essence of time, but I can post up more information about these if you're interested. So just a couple of examples of a balanced breakfast: bran flakes with fortified low-fat milk and some fruit, porridge made with low-fat milk and some berries, or an omelette made with low-fat cheese and some veggies. Some lunch ideas: so a chicken and salad sandwich on wholemeal bread, some hummus, pita bread and grapes, or beans on toast with a side of fruit, cheap and cheerful. And then some dinner ideas: spaghetti bolognese, chili con carne, salmon with rice and frozen veg. Prawn stir fry can be made really quickly on a budget. So frozen prawns, frozen stir fry mix, and even frozen rice, chuck it all together and it's ready in 5 minutes. And then just some places to get some recipe ideas. So some websites: firstly, BBC Good Foods, really good. So is RTE Lifestyle. And the INDI websites, that's the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute. They have a website and a cookbook with some really good recipes. UCD also have a student cookbook you can find if you just Google it. And there are websites as well where you can input what ingredients you have at home and it'll give you some recipe ideas. So Tesco has that functionality. So does the Supercook website and Recipe Land. And then there's some really good recipes out there on social media. So some dietitians have some really good recipes, some chefs, even some influencers. So have a look around and see what appeals to your taste. So thank you very much for listening. That's my email address if anyone wants to have a chat more, and that's my Instagram handle too. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to take some of your questions now that we got through from Instagram.
No, that was great. I'm sure we can all say that we've learned something new today. So we can now move on to the burning questions then that were asked over on our Instagram.
Sure.
So the first question being, are calories or macros more important?
Okay, so personally, I would say don't bother with either. I personally think they take the good and the fun out of eating. You know, eating is one of the best things about life. Why restrict yourself in that way? As well, a lot of the apps and different counting methods are totally inaccurate. So you're obsessing over these numbers that aren't even accurate. And as well, it can also lead to really unhealthy eating behaviors. So I would say enjoy your food, try and stick to the principles in the healthy eating guidelines, and you'll get all the nutrients that you need. Okay,
and now another one here is the best foods to get vitamin B as a vegetarian without supplements.
Okay, so we know that meat in particular is one of the best sources of B vitamins, particularly B12. So the first thing I'd say is that if you are a vegetarian and you've never had your B12 checked, probably it's worth having a chat with your GP about it and maybe getting it checked if it is a concern. Apart from that, for vegetarians, now not vegans, would be dairy products, so milk, cheese, yogurt, nutritional yeast, eggs, and fortified foods such as breakfast cereals are all good sources of B vitamin.
Okay, so another one we have is it okay if you don't eat your 5 a day, but you take vitamin supplements for it?
Okay, so to be quite blunt here, you need to be trying to get your 5 to 7 a day. While multivitamins are great, we know that, you know, our body gets more benefit from eating the food as a whole. We also know that multivitamins don't contain the antioxidants and fiber that a fruit and veg contain. Some tips, I guess, for trying to get more fruit and veg into your diet. You can blend up vegetables and incorporate it into cooking sauces, or chop up veg really small to incorporate into meals. For fruit, try blending up fruit into a smoothie if you're not used to the taste, or you can make berry compote to have in porridge or yogurt, for example. And then also just push yourself. So try to eat maybe 1 or 2 extra portions a week that you wouldn't normally eat, and over time that will gradually build up.
Now, so an interesting question that we actually found was someone asked, as a dietitian that is focusing on vitamin D bioavailability, can you explain the benefits and how we can incorporate it into our diet, and particularly the importance of it in our lives, especially during the time that we're in right now during lockdown?
Yeah, so it's a huge topic at the moment, like it's everywhere in the media. So firstly, the benefits of vitamin D. Traditionally, vitamin D is known for its role in bone health. So we know that we can't absorb any calcium that we eat without having adequate vitamin D blood levels. So vitamin D is really important for maintaining strong bones. Research has also shown that there's what's called vitamin D receptor cells in most organs of the body. And because of that, research is now showing links of vitamin D with a multitude of different diseases, such as heart disease, mental health, immune function now, as I'm sure you're all aware. In terms of COVID, what I'd like to say is that nothing we can do can boost our immune function beyond its normal capacity. So eating a healthy diet and staying active is really important for normal immune function, but we can't boost it past its normal functioning. In terms of vitamin D then for COVID, the guidelines haven't changed based on the research, and I don't think it's anything the general public need to worry about. Focus on taking your daily 10 microgram supplement between October and April, and you'd have nothing to worry about.
Okay. So a popular question was actually, are artificial sweeteners like aspartame actually bad for you?
Okay, so for the general population, no, they're not. They're absolutely fine. There's no evidence to suggest that they're harmful in any effect. Some people with certain conditions can't have them, but if you haven't any condition that you're worried about, they're actually really useful for reducing sugar intake. So in short, no, they're not harmful for the body at all.
And finally, our last question we have is, what is the worst nutritional myth that you've heard?
Okay, anyone who knows me will know that my favorite one is that coconut oil is this amazing superfood that, you know, is brilliant for your heart and can help you burn fat. Unfortunately, that's not true. It'd be amazing if it was, but it's not. It's important to note that there's no such thing as a superfood. That's actually a marketing term that companies use to try and get people to buy different foods. Each food is great in its own right, you know, even chocolate, it makes you feel great. So, you know, there's benefits to every food. With coconut oil, it is high in saturated fat, so it does actually contribute to high cholesterol levels. So while there's definitely a place for every food in your diet, it's important that we take coconut oil in moderation.
Okay, so that's really a wrap on the questions. Those were the most popular and the most repeated questions that we got. So
Great.
Thank you so much for your time, Aislinn. I'm sure we can all here say we've some sort of idea for improvement in our day-to-day lives as well after that information.
Great, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Mel.